Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 3 for this news report today, Monday, November 26, 2012. I'm Darko, and please be patient. I'm, just a little bit of time off there and I get a little rusty. But I hope you guys had a good Thanksgiving. I know I did, and I appreciate and I am very thankful that I have so much support for what I'm doing here, so I appreciate it very much. Okay, so we covered the madness of Black Friday and the zombies in part 1. And then in part 2, we kind of went through all the police state and some surveillance news. And in this third video, we're going to be covering the economy, politics, and then we'll get into some eugenics. Black Friday Mirage hides U.S. retail depression. Every year it's the same song and dance from U.S. propaganda machine. Right after the Black Friday post-Thanksgiving shopping orgy in the U.S., the numbers will be twisted to supposedly show that the U.S. retail sector is strong and healthy. That's immediately followed by a rousing chorus of happy days are here again. So once the dust settles after the holiday shopping season and a few of the sheep are paying attention, it will quietly announce another disastrous year for U.S. retailers. What is so pathetic about this sham is that not only does the song and dance never change, but it's all based upon the same transparent lie. That lie concerns inflation. So all inflation is produced by the money printing of bankers, and indeed the term itself originated as a shorthand for inflating the money supply. Where inflation closely relates to retail sales is that any, if not all, retail sales statistics are only relevant if inflation is totally stripped out of any calculation. Reporting that consumers paid higher prices for goods tells us absolutely nothing about the health of the U.S. retailers. The article goes on and talks about how people are struggling, and governments are now handing out record numbers of food stamps to people. It says this inevitable result a more than 50% decline in wages for the average American worker over the past 40 years. In other words, a greater than 50% decline in their standard of living. Food inflation is inflation. More Americans will use, this is of course before Thanksgiving from the 20th, more Americans will use food stamps for Thanksgiving this year than ever before. And an interesting observation, the Thanksgiving that I was at was held by a part of the family that's usually pretty well off, and they ran out of stuffing and many other things. And also, the same individual in the family who used to work at basically white collar, trading bonds at the Chicago Board of Trade, is now possibly going to be driving a truck. So, some very, very interesting things going on, as far as the economy and the standard of living goes. Goldman Sachs' global domination is now complete, as its Mark Carney takes over the Bank of England. Back on July 3rd, Zero Hedge made an explicit and very simplistic prediction. Now that the natural succession path of the Bank of England has been terminally derailed, it brings up those two other gentlemen already brought up previously as potential future heads of the bank, both of whom just happen to work for, or still do, at Goldman Sachs. Canada's Mark Carney and Goldman's Jim O'Neill. Then we have the head of Goldman Sachs wants to raise your retirement age. Also, while talking to people over Thanksgiving, they pretty much agreed with what I was saying as far as having to work harder and longer for less. Taking, $20,000 pay cuts and stuff like that. Just literally walking away from jobs. It says here that Lloyd Blankenfein, a 57-year-old CEO of Goldman Sachs, who was paid more than $16 million last year, appeared on CBS last night to talk about the fiscal cliff and lay some truth on the American sheeple. You all need to work harder. So you keep seeing this from these big elites and that stuff like that, and those that work for the super elites that get a nice comfy standard of living for doing all the dirty work, so you don't ever have to see their ugly faces behind, the man behind the curtain, these families, these bloodlines. And so most of them are telling the people, the American middle class in the world, around the globe, to work harder. You're just not working hard enough. So it's just interesting because, one of the relatives were saying, what? Well, I'm middle class and I'm just grateful to have everything. So, basically they're going to work until they die. I mean, it's pretty scary stuff, but that's what, when you got to do what you got to do to survive, that's one thing. When you got to do what you got to do to have 80-inch screen TVs, and brand new cars, every time something happens to it, instead of fixing it and fixing it yourself, you just go out and buy another car just to maintain that standard of living. That's psycho to me. that you're going to sit there and you're going to just exterminate yourself and work yourself in complete exhaustion. And there's statistics that have been done on this. They know that America is the most unhealthy country, not just because of what it eats and stuff like that, but because they work. They take the least amount of vacations and everything else. You know, I see it all over, you know, from people around just yesterday. You know, guy was working on collecting scrap metal, you know, all day. And I asked him, I seen him, and he's like, yeah, you know, I've been busy. I was like, and he's like, yeah, and it's Sunday, my day off. So, I mean, this is happening everywhere. Goodbye, petrodollar. Hello, agri-dollar. So it goes on here, and it basically says that when it comes to firmly established currency for commodities, self-reinforcing systems in the past century of human history, nothing comes close to the petrodollar, and it's safe to say that few things have shaped the face of the modern world as a reserve currency. According to some, for now mostly overheard whispering in hallways, the primary commodity imbalance that will shape the face of global trade in the coming years is not that of energy, but that of food, driven by constantly rising food prices. That's what we're talking about, inflation, due to a fragmented supply side unable to catch up with increasing demand, one in which China will play a dominant role. But it goes on here, it says not due to its commodity extraction or processing, but on the contrary, due to its soaring deficit for agricultural products, and in which such legacy trade deficit culprits as the U.S. will suddenly enjoy a huge advantage in both trade and geopolitical terms. And here's a real graph of China's deficit dive, saying net trade surplus deficit for agricultural products in U.S. Dollars and billions in 2009, just basically here dropping, while both Europe and the U.S. Kind of edge up. It says China is a huge disadvantage as it accounts for 20% of the world population, but only 7% of arable land. And for a suddenly very food trade deficit vulnerable China, it means that the biggest winners may be Brazil, U.S., and Canada. Oh yeah, and Africa. Obama to hold private swear-in ceremony for second presidential term, so 1 month from now, on January 20th, 2013, says that President Obama will be required by law to be sworn in for a second presidential term by noon. However, something mysterious is happening again with the ceremony, raising the eyebrows of some. Since the 20th falls on a Sunday, a private ceremony will be held, signifying the possibility of fraud, as the public ceremony will be held the following day. The fact is that even a deviation by even one single word during the ceremony, as admitted by Chief Justice Roberts in 2009, could signify an unlawful and unconstitutional swear-in, as we saw 4 years ago. Denver man accused of threatening to kill Obama mentally ill, says judge. The 20-year-old man charged with threatening to kill the president during a visit to the state is severely mentally ill and must remain in custody, says a federal judge. So, pretty creepy now that you can get visits by the U.S. Secret Service just for tweeting something about the commander-in-chief. Also, pretty crazy stuff with Marines or veterans and stuff like that getting thrown into mental wards for criticizing people on social networks. So, Kentucky teacher in trouble for politically charged message on whiteboard. Most of you have probably already seen this, but it's a completely loaded article, and it doesn't really describe what really happened. So, the statement was not part of any course curriculum or lesson plan. So that's, like I said before, there's no deviating from the curriculum anymore. So I've covered this before about a video where the student actually recorded this this individual who said he was going to vote for Romney, or I don't know who it was. It was basically almost 2 years ago. And he basically got attacked by other students, and the teacher actually started to jump on the student, attacking them for not, basically bashing Obama or whatever it was. But it says an unidentified student in the classroom snapped a photo of the statement on the whiteboard, then gave the photo to the Sentinel Echo. Bennett said that part of Baker's punishment was a required apology to her students. The apology had reportedly already been given. Quote, the teacher made a mistake, and I believe the teacher regrets that, Bennett said, according to the Sentinel Echo. Quote, our objective is to teach the established curriculum, so just be good zombie drones, and raise a nice dumbed-down population of consumers. Good job. What they're not saying is that it was originally a student that had wrote it, or had raised this quote, and it had to do with, Democrats or Republicans won't go to heaven or something like that. Something real stupid. But it says that one of the comments said she wrote it in after a student said it and was discussed in class. It says, when I was in school, granted a good long time ago, we did at times discuss topics that came up in class, even though they may have deviated from the almighty lesson plan. Then something I'm seeing pretty interesting after we were just talking about Obama and swearing in secret again, is Navy fires 2 more commanders, David Petraeus, John Allen, Charles Goet, Jeffrey Sinclair. Says the Navy on Monday dismissed 2 commanders amid allegations of misconduct weeks before they were both scheduled to assume new commands. So interesting. Because there's been a lot of people that have been stepping down or, quote, getting fired. Rats jumping ship, high-profile gangsters are leaving Obama. Just days after Mafia boss Barack Obama was reelected to his throne, several of his key foot soldiers appear to be jumping ship from his regime. Obama will be hard-pressed to fill these positions with such obedient thugs. Well, they're already starting to come out of the woodwork. Key players in recent false flag operations submit resignations to Obama. One day after President Obama was reelected, Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State, announced that she would be stepping down from her position. In 2013, potential replacements include, of course, Skull and Bones John Kerry, like I've mentioned before, Susan Rice, probably the most realistic ex-UN ambassador, but she does such a good job for them over there that she may just stay there. Security Exchange Commission head is stepping down. I think Eric Holder's stepping down. Then you have Israel's defense minister, Barak, abruptly quits politics. So that's the mainstream media is calling it a surprise decision. So this is, of course, just after this whole basically attack by Israel on Gaza. Although, you know, one thing I did find interesting, guys, was in all the radio stations that I was listening to during this week, during Thanksgiving and all that, I noticed that most of the American U.S. radio, it's not a big surprise, but they just completely ignored all the facts that I covered last Friday about who actually instigated the whole thing, about how they assassinated Hamas leader and triggered it, that Israel did not want peace. But they completely flip-flopped that around, saying that, oh, no, everybody's saying poor Palestinians, poor Gaza, and nobody's talking about the Israelis that are being, affected by this. So just complete nonsense. But, some people said, oh, it's because of their failure against Gaza, their attack, or whatever, pillar of cloud. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think the whole thing was just smoke and mirrors for Syria, what was going on in Syria. While West Bank, American tourists take aim in a Jewish settlement. Says Israeli soldiers supervise an American tourist firing a gun as she participates in an introductory course handling firearms. Says hundreds of American adventure seekers have found the latest thrill at the West Bank firing range, shooting pictures of Arab-looking targets and learning a new version of Israeli patriotism. It's giving tourists the real taste of anti-terrorist operations with Arab-like mannequins posing as targets. Texas schools are teaching Boston Tea Party was a terrorist act, so this isn't the first time. Remember, it was Homeland Security that was actually teaching that the forefathers were actually terrorists. The most historical instance of protesting against taxation without representation is now being taught in Texas schools is a terrorist act. So it says, as recently as January this year, the Texas Re-Education Service Center curriculum included a lesson plan that depicted the Boston Tea Party, an event that helped ignite the American Revolution, as an act of terrorism. Then we have government website for immigrants. Come to America and take advantage of our free stuff. Go in there and check it out. It's a pretty long article. It says there's a website run by the federal government. Welcome to USA.gov encourages new immigrants to the U.S. to apply for welfare benefits. Then talking about the Spanish Revolution, separatists prevail in the Catalonian elections, but support for independence from Spain is splintered. In the vote, seen as a test of support for independence from Spain, a majority of voters of Catalonia have picked separatist candidates in regional elections. Polls show that the support for independence in the relatively wealthy region has more than doubled to 50% since Spain's economic crisis began. Of course, just like the United States, when the Confederate States wanted to basically secede, what happened? It says that the central government of Madrid has vowed to fight the independence movement every step of the way. That's because, well, they want to be able to suck all the wealth and hard work, the result of hard work from the taxpayers as much as they possibly can. So the bigger tax base, the more money you can steal. So they don't like people leaving that. Once they catch on to, there's really no benefit for them anymore. And protesting Spanish cops say, forgive us for not arresting those truly responsible for this crisis, bankers and politicians. This is GGN, and I'm Darko. Thank you.